For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, to oppose the motion.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying I very much appreciate the service of Mr. Gallego and all the veterans on both sides of the aisle who have served our nation. And I appreciate all of the contributions Mr. Gallego and all the other 62 members of the committee have made into producing this National Defense Authorization Act. It has been a bipartisan product in the tradition of this committee. You know, if you think about it, for 53 straight years, Congresses of both parties have passed and presidents of both parties have signed into law a Defense Authorization Act. And that's been true through Vietnam and the Cold War and 9/11. It's been true through Watergate and race riots and economic recessions and bitter political feuds. And yet through all those things, somehow the parties could come together to do what was needed for our troops and for our country's security. I think that strong tradition of bipartisanship is something that we should not walk away from lightly. Now, we have heard some discussion, complaints really, on both sides of the aisle about using OCO to get up to the president's level. Now, if you look at this chart, this is the president's budget. This is the congressional budget, which this bill is compliant with. There is a little difference in where the light blue and the dark blue start and stop. But the net effect, when you add it all together, is exactly the same. $612 billion. That's what the president asked for. That's what this bill provides. There is no difference between the two. I agree that we ought to find a better way to have fiscal discipline without the arbitrary caps and sequestration that's in the Budget Control Act. But this bill can't do that. This bill is a defense authorization bill. It's not a budget bill. It's not an immigration bill. It's not even a defense appropriation bill. So if this bill fails, then how does that get us to fixing our budget problems? You know, the truth is we could all find an excuse to vote against every bill every day for what's not in it. But that doesn't make a lot of sense. What's important is what is in it, and what is in it is really important for our troops and for our national security. As much as I appreciate Congressman Gallego's service, I find it ironic that he would offer an amendment that tries to make sure our troops get paid even in the event of a government shutdown, and yet by voting against this bill, the troops don't get paid. How does that fit together? Let me just mention two of the things that are in this bill for our troops. One is a new retirement system for people who sign up for the military. Right now, 83% of the people who serve come away with no retirement. Under this bill, they can put some money aside, the government will match it, and they can have a nest egg. You vote against this bill, that doesn't happen. One of the complaints we've all heard so many times is that that transition from active duty to VA is problematic because you can't stay on the same drugs. One of the things this bill does, it says they've got to have a joint formulary. So you stay on the same drugs, so you can take better care of the people as they transition. Doesn't that make sense? I hope all members had a chance to read the Washington Post editorial today. Let me just read the last sentence. Far better for the President and his party's leadership in Congress to help an adequate defense budget keep moving through Congress rather than perpetuate a fight all Americans, whether Republican or Democrat, may later regret. I think that's the bottom line. This doesn't solve all the problems. It doesn't try to solve all the problems. I know we've got more debate, more discussion to come, but this is a step on what has been a very bipartisan bill. Mr. Speaker, here's the bottom line. We're incredibly privileged to have these jobs, to live in this country, but those privileges only come because brave men and women are willing to volunteer to serve and sacrifice for our country. Now, we can never match their courage and dedication and sacrifice, but surely to goodness we can do better than use them as pawns for some sort of attempt to apply political pressure on issues that have nothing to do with this bill. Surely we can do better than that, and the way to do better than that is to vote against this motion and for final passage. I yield back.